So, good morning, John. How's
Morning,
it going
Mark.
today?
Going very well.
So
Good to
far, it's
good to
early
see.
in the
Right. So
morning yet.
far, we're about right. We're only 10 seconds into this. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I want to do a brief revealing intro. So, my
Okay.
students call me Professor Gura, which always in the back of my mind makes me want to laugh because I continue to feel like an 8-year-old. However, having said that,
Well, you continue to feel like an 8-year-old or an 80-year-old?
eight, eight.
8-year-old. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I can relate to that
I
even more.
I
Okay.
I
Good.
won't know what it feels like to be 80 for a few years yet. Anyhow, I suspect, like you, I was a public school teacher in inner city New York City for
Mhm.
almost 2 decades, and kind of like your experience. And then I went to the Central District of New York City, the Board of Ed, where I was a curriculum specialist, a professional development specialist, went through a whole bunch of different jobs there, ended up before retiring really as the head of STEM education for the city's school system. And then after that, I went to work for Fordham University, and I've been teaching graduate education ever since, most recently for Touro University. And you, I probably would describe you as a serial principal or serial school leader.
A serial something. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, no,
I
that's
think,
that's pretty much what you and also
right. They have my
uh,
wanted poster in the DOE and a few other urban school districts. Not
right.
wanted necessarily for a good reason, but you know,
Right. So you ran schools and then you went to
mhm,
district level. Um,
right. And
so
then
I'll call them supervisory roles, and then you went to
mhm,
Lehigh, where you started the Urban Principals Academy, which is really quite something. Okay,
thank you.
so now we know
Thank
who
you.
each other is, and I want to share the notes I prepared for today,
Yes, they
primarily
were very
because
thorough. Terrific. Right.
I want to make sure we have stuff that gets us agitated. You know, we're not agitated enough ordinarily
You know,
about
I'm
education. I went to Google to see what's been going on in education, and it got me agitated. By the way,
I was and I don't mean to interrupt, but just yesterday I was having a conversation with a gentleman who maybe at some point you might like to, the three of us could speak, Michael
good.
Mascolo. And we were talking about the concept of edge, of having people be either too comfortable where they are, which leads to boredom, or people being pushed so far beyond their edge, so far beyond their agitation point, their comfort level, that they have nothing to do except, like in a Looney Tunes cartoon, look down and see there's nothing beneath their feet anymore and crash.
I think that's very astute. And
So
I
where is
mean,
the balance? So where as educators do we find it within ourselves so then we can then present it within the rest of the school community?
well, yeah, we both know that saying that education moves at a glacial pace is
Mm,
true. So we want to budge things and nudge things in the right direction, and so we don't want to frighten people or get things chaotic, but we do want to move things along. And yes, far too many of us, even if our jobs are really nutty, in terms of conceiving what we're doing, far too many of us are kind of lazy. You know, they're kind of stuck in a rut and it is boring. So let me just share a couple of these items. This one literally showed up in my inbox this morning. I'm not even sure what to think of this, but this is New Jersey wide, as reported here. AI will grade their high stakes tests this year. So, in other words, and where I shine in on high stakes test is, as we're going to get into. We've seen the notes. I think I'll use the word. I think they've had a toxic effect on the institution of school, and
Well,
so
especially when the focus turns there uh, in lieu of other very important items that should be existing in schools, like social emotional intelligence, like the arts. And again, we just use the word balance. So again, where is the balance?
yeah, exactly. As we'll get into further, they've it's kind of like a viral infection. They they were adopted for good reason, and then look, it's totally out of control in the wrong way. I mean, here's another item that turned up, chronic
Chronic absenteeism.
absenteeism. And so I think the two are related. Why are the kids deciding they don't want to go to school? Hint, they don't sense anything they do there really matters much, and it certainly turns them off, bores them.
And Mark,
Yeah.
it's sort of maybe getting off on a tangent here, but I think that's one of the things we do very well. Is what about the adults in the schools? What about the things that turn them off? Um, uh,
Oh,
just
glad you pointed it
yesterday,
out.
right? I think again this morning there was uh, some documentation that came out about teacher morale, and this is not new. Teacher morale in the United States, especially in the public sector, has been fairly low for many, many years. And 14%, every single school year, 14% of teachers either leave their school or just uh, leave teaching completely. So you have that constant turnover, and then you have the other issue where education is not attracting that many people, enough really high quality people. And again, why is that? And very often it's because teachers feel they have a lack of voice and a lack of creativity and a lack of autonomy in their jobs.
And they, anyone who's done the job the way they're expected to do it would be bored. Thank God it's 3 o'clock. I get to go home now and have a beer and watch the TV for a while.
Have you ever been in a school, visiting, and the morning announcement comes on? Maybe it's principal or assistant principal or somebody, and it's this time of the year, and they're already announcing how many days are left in the school year.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. Yes. In fact, so I met you as the director of the last school I worked in, which was a, a small boutique-ish type school
I love that
with a
boutique. Yes, we
lot of rough edges there in East Harlem. And the school before that, as you know, I worked for the Beta School, which was another small boutique school. And that population was described as incorrigible delinquents. And so a lot of sense of
And that's
humor.
the way I thought of you guys as our faculty, incorrigible delinquents. So perfect.
On a good day, on a good day. At any rate, there was a teacher there. I mean, because it took a lot of sense of humor to get through that school. And I mean, literally, I mean, this was an ongoing joke. Literally, at the first minute, like 8:40, the first minute school started on the first day of school, he will, man, this is a big guy. He'd go out into the hallway and bellow, 182 more days until summer vacation. That was in the very first, and he kept that joke up every morning of the school year, counting down, 67. Anyhow, moving along. So student engagement, this is Ed Week, which really is the blue chip, periodical for education.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Very, I can't think of anything better, really. And this is says fall 2026. They're all so this
Yeah,
is current.
but
They're planning for
right,
something
but we're
coming
we're
right up.
talking in 2026, a survey offering clues how to engage with students. This could be 1976, and there's still clues how to engage with students. Why is this rocket science? You
Yeah,
know, you reference performing arts where we work together. We engaged our students. We knew how to engage them.
yeah, we did, and because we understood we had to, and so many of our colleagues are still coming from talk about glacial paces of change. They're still coming from, well, the kids should do whatever work we put in front of them because they're supposed to. And shocking when they don't, considering what it is so many of us put in front of them or are forced to put in front of them. But, this is the blue chip periodical. And hello, a survey offers clues. Hello, we really need to do so much better than that. Student mental health
Yep.
is in
Yep.
crisis.
Right.
Well, what do you expect? If you force them to show up to some place where the main job often in many of these schools is crowd control. You know, we'll tell you when you need to go to the bathroom. We'll tell you when you
Mm-hmm.
can
Mm-hmm.
talk. We'll tell you when you're hungry for lunch. Line up, but this
And
is
start off your day going through a metal detector and
yeah, right. So the Maslow uh, and his theory about satisfying the human needs of teachers certainly flips over in his grave every day. Um, so
yep.
this technique of having a Zoom conversation backed up by notes, I developed this for my teaching, but I like to pepper these notes with recent headlines because sometimes, John, when I hear myself talk about education, I think, are you the only one? Are you the lone dissenting nut? But no, I mean, all of this,
No, at least here we know there are at least two of us. So
at least two of them.
a-
Well, now we
and
know,
quite a lot more as we've seen at
sure. And
rounds in our classes. And the fact of the matter is that we're still talking about the same topics. This
exactly,
problem, this problem, this problem, this problem. And then our schools are compared to schools in that are members of the OECD, the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development worldwide. And the US schools are somewhere, depending on the subject matter or morale or things like that, somewhere in the middle. We look at our national testing, the National Assessment of Educational Progress. It's basically flatlined over the years, kind of stuck in the middle somewhere. And if it ticks up a little bit, everyone talks about we're getting so much better. But
well,
is that what school is about? Just this?
hopefully not. But so you mentioned the national, whatever it is, of educational progress, commonly known as the nation's report card.
Right, right.
And for anybody reading the education news, and there's many, many periodicals that come out daily, weekly, monthly. I write for a couple of them. Um, Over and over and over again, we've been hearing uh, reading scores are down, because of COVID, you know. And so I went and looked that up for my students. That report, the nation's report card, the item that's often cited is eighth grade reading level. Only one third of our
Hmm.
students are at proficient level. I mean, I went and looked it up. I believe that report is 26 years old. Yes, it goes up a few points, goes down, but basically it's
Exactly. It
always been
flatlines. Yeah.
that. So what is all of this craziness about the enforced remote? That's not the cause. The cause
No,
is
no,
the
of course
whole
not.
model is wrong. Here's my all-time after 50 odd years in the field, this is my favorite saying of all time. Education is not
Hmm.
the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire. And, I explain that to my students. I don't think we need to explain that. It's a great imagery.
Yeah. Hmm.
But unfortunately, I would put money on most of what goes on in most of our schools is the filling of a pail. Certainly not the lighting of a
And the
fire.
putting out of fires,
Touche.
literally
Good,
and
good guess.
figuratively.
Yes, well, that's what Ken Robinson,
Hmm.
who we're both big fans of, he has that
Right.
famous TED talk, Do Schools
Hmm.
Kill Creativity?
Yeah.
So all of this, I want to ask us, I want to ask you, I want to ask anyone watching this. So what is the actual mission of our schools as it's lived out in every school day? What is
Mark,
being done and what should be done? I'll let you
Mark,
go first.
I'm sorry, you can walk into almost any school in our country, and somewhere outside the main office in a picture frame from 1976 is the mission. Somebody wrote it back then, they put it up on the wall. It's in a frame. And how often do they look at it, talk about it, or even update it? I'm being
Well,
facetious, but
I sat in on a few of those meetings where the school mission is written out, and invariably they're the same. It's like a rubber stamp.
mhm,
Um, we want to create lifelong learners.
right.
But I remember sitting in on those meetings and a lot of discussion first about what is a mission? What is the
Compared to, and what is
organization?
a vision? What is a mission? What is a vision? What's the
Yeah.
difference? Right.
And in a really sharp school, they talk for 15 minutes about the difference between the two. So just thinking about the generic every school, what are they actually doing every day? I mean, clearly a great many of them in the inner city, the mission is to get through the day, you know,
Mhm.
get through the day intact. Um, and what else are they actually doing?
And it may not be written, but it's certainly spoken about. Let's get those test scores up, folks.
Yeah, well, it is not written, but yeah, one of the reasons I value teaching graduate school in-service teachers so much is I get to ask them, what's going on in your school, you know?
Right. Isn't that wonderful? Right.
And yeah, so yeah, I I've heard that pep talk that the principal gives on the first day, the first meeting
Mhm.
back after summer vacation, after the coffee hour, and is this year we're going to get those scores up.
Mhm.
That's the biggest bullet, from the get-go.
Right.
And we're going to get even deeper into this. But yeah, I mean, I think we see it the same way. We shouldn't forget that our schools really have two functions. They have an educational function, but they have a custodial function. The kid,
Absolutely.
their parents are working. They need their children to be somewhere and supervised in a warm, well-lit environment with some chocolate chip cookies occasionally and
Hmm.
the anti-bully patrol and all of that. And that certainly is legitimate and a great thing. But it ends up being, what do you do today, little child? You go to school. You go to school, and Mr. Drescher, the teacher of class 5D, has 32 little Johnnies and Jills, and it's quite a challenge to keep up with them, particularly in trying to force the mandated curriculum. And so the daily mission becomes, it's 8:40 now, let's get to 3 p.m.,
Yeah. Well, you said a couple of really important things in there. First of all, the mandated curriculum, but even before that, that first day back when, yeah, everyone comes in to, the cafeteria or somewhere, and there's coffee and bagels and cake, and everyone's schmoozing a little bit. And maybe if the principal has some smarts, they are introducing some new staff members, possibly. You can set the tone for the entire year on that first day. And it can go downhill pretty quickly, or you can be establishing something where, okay, this is going to be different. Uh, they care about what we think. They want us to work together. One idea, and it took, as a school leader, it took me a while to get to these things. But you sit down, and after the bagels and coffee and everything, possibly you take your staff and split them up into groups and have them work on what does great teaching look like to you? What is great? What are the characteristics of great teaching? What what do we want to see working here? What are our goals as the adults here? What are our goals for the year? Instead of my telling you and having you watch some boring PowerPoint, you go off and work, share with each other, and you come back and we'll all listen. We'll all grow. And maybe we can actually come up with some kind of framework, not that I've produced for you as a leader, but that we've put together ourselves collaboratively. And then the other thing about the mandated curriculum, I mean, you know, it's been that way for ever since I can remember. And is it done in conjunction with someone who really knows, or a group of people who really know the students in this school? If you hire teachers, I mean, to me, the optimal thing for a teaching staff would be that they have the wherewithal to put the curriculum together themselves based
Oh,
on
yes.
based on who they are as professionals and knowing the students that are going to be in front of them. And it's organic and it's updated as needed. And yes, it's more work, but now we're all working as professionals.
Wow. And so you did one great thing and you said a bunch of great things. The best thing you did, John, was to redirect this conversation. Because as I was listening to you, I realized this might come off as just Mark complaining. And I don't want that because that's not going to do much good. And one of the sub themes of as many of these conversations as we're going to have, and I hope we're going to have more, John, is that
You
well,
keep paying me, I'll be here.
right. Right. Well,
Right,
I
right,
even
sure.
make you I even make you bring your own coffee. Um, one of the sub themes is that we actually know what to do. We just don't do it or don't do it enough. And you So I ask, what should the mission be? And you used you described in your mind a school leader who's an instructional leader, and you're
Mhm.
talking about how can we grow. And in my mind, that education is personal growth. So the mission really ought to be to spark and nourish and guide personal growth. And
Not just for the students, for the adults as
not
well.
You keep coming back to that, and amen. Yes, we're not going to serve the students well if we educators can't find interest and satisfaction. We could leave it at that, but we don't. Because I probably popped another few gems in here somewhere. Okay, so, well, last time we met, we talked about school culture. And so, I think this is true for both school leaders and teachers that, yeah, it's easy to feel intimidated. The district wants those scores up. The district wants every teacher, following the pacing chart.
Mm,
The district wants this, that, and the other thing. And no, we are not advocating open defiance of anything. Maybe some surreptitious tweaking
creative subversion.
of some creative subversion. And so how do you do that? I think the best thing we've stumbled upon is school culture,
Hmm.
learning culture. It's kind of, you can use it as a wedge to get things, to put some humanity and some growth, personal growth, intellectual growth, community growth, all of that in there.
Right. I would just, because at the top, when we first started talking, we talked about uh, being agitated and that um, I don't know if we can get there comfortably or we should get there comfortably. I think when people get comfortable, they slack off. I think if you're not constantly feeling we can do better here and we need to strive for more. And as leaders, we have to figure out where our own edge is. And are we pushing ourselves enough? Are we pushing too hard? Are we slacking off on that? And then we have to figure out, as the adults in a school, the same thing. And where are we willing to go? How much are we willing to strive for? And very often, that's not comfortable, because you look at a bell curve and you start
It's not.
pushing up that bell curve, and that can be steep work. And
Well,
yet,
I think one way this can work is simply by, in every school, there are some teachers who are risk takers, who go the extra mile, who
yep, mhm, yep,
um, I'm going to relate a Jon Drescher move in a
yeah,
minute,
please.
but
Okay. What was
you'll
that?
love this. And probably the gutsiest thing I've ever seen anyone do in school. But just to finish the thought, I think I think when the school leader, points out in acknowledgement a teacher who's done something not illegal, but outside the lines, taking a risk,
Hmm.
done something creative or innovative or different without turning her back on the official playbook completely. I think by acknowledging these people, by highlighting that's
Hmm.
something, that's a way of saying, look, this person teaches out of the comfort zone.
They should be celebrated.
Yeah. So one day, I was at Performing Arts at East Harlem. performing arts school, I don't know, 7, 8 years, something like that. And one day, um, the school leader, one Jon Drescher, says there are no rules. No one's in charge of anything, and there are no rules.
Yeah, I remember
And
that.
it was quite remarkable. I mean, it was really remarkable in that everyone, including the teachers, just ran around. But it demonstrated a number of really interesting things. One, nobody took it too far. Nobody ran out of the school.
Just
Nobody hurt
me.
anyone else. And people just ran around making a bunch of noise and not following a schedule or any. And then after about 40 minutes, the school leader, Jon Drescher, said, "Okay, let's go back." And everybody did. And so it was a great lesson that we had a community. I come back to this, that we respected more than any resentment about anything we might have, or any resentment for ordinary regimentation. Um, it was a very edgy way for us to learn what we had there and what we really wanted to do. And what we really wanted to do was the school's agenda. We wanted to be in classes and learning.
Right.
I'll leave it
And
at that.
but we, but we also, and I think this is not that subversive, I think. We also realized there were times that we could learn a whole lot outside of our classes. We could learn a whole lot on trips. We could, the adults could learn from the students can learn from each other. And because I was thinking of a day, again, during those 7 or 8 years we were both there together. It was late in the school year, hot. And just on a whim, we said, okay, you know what? We're getting out of here. And we took the whole school to Central Park.
Yeah, a little
And
spontaneity like that, without
exactly,
permission slips, without telling the district.
we're just
Um,
we're just and we all went to Central Park and spent the day there. And it was wonderful.
yeah,
And it was very spontaneous.
we could pull that off because we had good relationships with those kids. They knew
Yeah,
we respected them.
right.
We weren't easy on them. I mean, it's the same rules as any other school. Um, but I mean, throughout all of this, another thing you touched on before was each class, as far as I could tell, most of them had a handcrafted curriculum. What was
That's
the
right.
and and when you create a curriculum on your own, and you might create it out of, I don't want to scare anyone into thinking, you've got to write your own book and blah, it's you can it's more like an alchemy. It's you're curating a learning experience for kids out of bits and pieces and things you may have done before or found. And the kids, that this is just right for them. It's the right level for them. It's what they're interested in. You make opportunities for their voice and their choice. So there was a lot of that going on at that
Right. And a
school.
lot of it was interdisciplinary. As a
Yes.
visual artist, didn't you? I seem to remember you doing, certainly collaborating with other teachers to produce things that they were
Yeah.
working on, and certainly the incredible shows that we produced. Everybody was involved. All
Yeah. In a way, I was lucky because I was the visual arts teacher, and believe it or not, I was a visual arts teacher for 6 or 7 years, long before I came to your school, before I found out there was a state curriculum for visual art. Because I would, on the first day of my being hired, I got the same spiel from every single principal was, I don't know anything about art. I don't know what you're supposed to do. So, some of them just said, just keep order and I trust you. Some of them said, well, do wonderful things. Um, but I don't know. I got off on that. But yeah, there was definitely a spirit there of what are we going to do with the kids? And we all kept to our subject. We honored the subject, but we had license to be creative with it. And
Right, right.
maybe I'll just leave it at that. The curriculum was a big part of it, freeing ourselves from just going through a textbook. So,
Exactly, exactly.
I was going to jump into this whole thing about tests and but I'm just going to make one point because I want to I mean this old phrase wagging the tail wagging the dog, that's what I see has happened with the standardized tests. In the beginning, we had standardized tests to see how we done, summative it. And pretty soon it's like, well, now these are high stakes tests. So we got to make sure that the numbers look good. So all of that juicy stuff that Mark and Jermaine and Suzanne and Mendel, all of those other teachers there used to do, we can't do that. We've got to do stuff that's calculated and researched to prove it can produce good numbers, not smart kids or, satisfied any, just numbers. And so the tail is wagging the dog. But um,
But then what? The tests are not going away. So what
good point.
does an effective school look like?
Well,
A harmonious school look like when this is going to happen? We're going to have to give these standardized exams. So where is our focus going to be? Do we have to focus on prep for those exams? Or do we still focus on what we think is the best day-to-day approach to engaging effectively and harmoniously our students? Not Floyd Beecham, who I worked with for many years at Lehigh, wrote a book, Cultural Collusion and Collision, or it might be Cultural Collision and Collusion. But the fact is that in a lot of schools, the adults work together, but they don't really know the students that well. And at some point, you're going to have that collision between what the adults think is important, what the students would like to be doing, because, and it doesn't have to be that way. And so, how do we open ourselves up and have an environment where students want to be there? There's a really exciting learning going on, projects. Um, there's a wonderful film that came out, If We Build It, They Will Come, about these students, I think, in all high school dropouts, possibly in Kansas, somewhere in the Midwest, who a teacher got them together to plan and build a community center in town. And all of a sudden, these students were engaged. They showed up early in the morning. They stayed late in the day. They wanted to do this.
perfect example. Yeah. Let them learn from doing real things in the
Yeah.
real world that make a difference in the real that I mean that's one approach that is wonderful. Um, so I'm just watching the time. I want to kind of race through some of this here. Yeah. So if we're prepping for tests, well, clearly there are a bunch of skills that aren't being addressed. Um,
And for prepping for tests, it's not very exciting for the
they're not good.
faculty either.
We could get into they're inaccurate. They don't test the right things. I mean, if you laid out the standards you've been teaching to, they don't even test for all of that stuff. It's just, there's an old saying that I think is very true here, which is if you can't test what's important, and they really can't, I mean, then you make important what you can test.
Th- th-
And
There you go. Exactly.
yeah, and so yeah, so that bottom the lower order thinking skills on Bloom's taxonomy, yeah, that you can test. So that gets overly taught. And that's, so we're not even going to go through this, but if you look, if you Google what skills do employers value, you get over and over again from many sources, you get things like leadership, problem solving, time management, emotional intelligence, creativity. This stuff, for the most part, isn't taught. And the real kicker is going back to the start of the conversation. If you give kids activities that teach these things, they'll come to school, they'll behave themselves, they'll be engaged. So we really need to ask ourselves, what are we doing? We know better than what we're doing. So I
But
thought
that's a
I
dangerous question for a lot of people to ask because they don't necessarily want to hear the answer.
yeah,
Because
it
the
requires effort.
alternatives, yeah, because it would be an enormous shift,
You got to stop
enormous sea
being an
change of
implementer.
what do we have to do to really get on uh, a path of doing what we should be doing. And like you said earlier, sometimes they see it, but the change is glacial, and life changes are not glacial. They,
No, not these days. Not
no.
with AI. So I just want to show a couple of more things over the next 10 minutes or so. I'm sure you remember this. This goes back 25 years. And I mentioned to people,
Hmm.
colleagues, educators, that I have great problems with the standardized tests. And not even the test so much, the way we've allowed that tail to wag the dog. Nothing so wrong about the tail. It's the context we've created to
Hmm.
suck up to it, so to speak. So anyhow, this 25 years ago, this came out in the New York City school system. I'm sure you remember it, John. I happen to be,
25 years ago, I had already left the city,
oh, I see. Well,
but
anyhow,
I was in the state. I was in New York State. I
I
was
was
somewhere else.
part of the group at the from the Central Board of Education that selected this and rolled it out under
Hmm.
Deputy Chancellor Rizzo. And every single classroom in the city, that was over 1,000 schools at the time, had this. This was the first set of standards that the New York City system had. And this came out of the University of Pittsburgh's Institute for Learning. And basically, what they was
Hmm. I remember
this
that.
is portfolio assessment. This was
Hmm.
have kids make real things, do real things, uh, collect authentic samples, and
Right.
don't give them tests. You want them to learn how to write a business letter? Have them write the letter. Have them send it, see what comes back in the mail. Rate them
That's right.
on that. I mean, and on and on and on and on. And of course, when the next, uh, I'm not going to bother going into this because I want to get to the good stuff. But yeah, when the next administration came in, Mayor Bloomberg and his Chancellor Joel Klein, who were all
Hmm.
business people, they
Yep.
took that whole thing and just threw it out the window because they wanted higher test scores. Okay, that's my
Do,
editorial opinion.
do you remember there was a time I remember as a New York City classroom teacher, ouch, in the 70s, when
Me too.
standardized tests were given, number one, you were given a grid. If you wanted to score them that day, you could. You didn't have to wait months to get the results back. You could get immediate feedback and actually maybe even utilize that information. And then there was something on each student's record card where the scores were entered by hand because you just scored them. And there was a line on the bottom, a space that said, if you, as the teacher, do not agree with these scores, state your reasons why.
Wow.
So you are with them day in, day out. This was elementary school. And here is this snapshot that may have come back a little fuzzy. And if you didn't agree with it, you could override the score and say, this, I have evidence that shows that this student is capable of much better work on an ongoing basis. And that had weight. I don't remember when they tossed that one out, but that was important for teachers. That
Yeah, that
their
is
professional insight
that is
over could
important.
override a test score.
Yeah, and boy, that really humanizes us. So we started out
Mhm.
talking about AI scoring
Mhm.
the standardized, and we've come down to this where the human judgment trumps the template driven, generic test. By the way, I was still teaching at the school, our school, after you went off on a sabbatical. And and things got kind of weird in the district, and we had an incoming class of seventh graders who were really rough. This was a district where every kid had to choose which middle school wanted to go to. There was no such thing as an assigned school. Well, there were some kids in the district who by then had been so turned off to school that their choice of middle school was whatever, choose for me. I don't care. I'm going to be a failure wherever I. So we got a bunch of those kids in.
Yeah, but Mark, we had an audition process all the
Um,
years we were there together,
but
which changed.
the year after you left,
They
the
threw that out.
district had this 25 group of kids that didn't want to
Mhm.
audition and they just kind of
And
shoved it down the
they
throat.
shoved them in there. And I remember going up to the district office and
Yeah.
having a, a not too polite verbal heated discussion with a deputy superintendent about taking all of these years of a process. And we didn't just audition for talent, we also auditioned for desire. People who might not
Oh,
have had the
absolutely.
so-called talent, but who would be
Yes.
motivated by the arts, and we took them in as well. And the argument was from this assistant superintendent, you're not there anymore. Why do you care?
Wow.
And I just looked at him and I said, after all of these years and all of us working together and all of the other students who were there, how could you even ask me that question?
Expedience.
And
So
within 2 or 2.5 years, they closed the school
yeah,
because everything
and
broke down.
a magnificent school that was. And I went into that spiel last. I didn't realize
Mhm.
that till I was working for the central board and visiting schools,
Mhm.
all around the city continually. And then I realized how special that school had been. But to finish this little piece,
Yeah.
there were like
So
25 or so of those, I'll call them delinquent refuseniks. They just hated school, and for good reason. School had not served them well. So
no.
they were shoved into our East Harlem Performing Arts School, and they became my homeroom. And
All
you know,
25 of them? That's
all
great. Okay.
25 of them. And I like kids, so they knew I liked them, and they ended
Hmm.
up liking me. And usually they behave, for the worst reason, which is we don't want to do this to Mr. G. But when it finally came around to me administering the summative, reading the literacy
Hmm.
test in the spring, we were alone in my art room, and I remember reading to them, the first page, this is such an important test, kids. You must try your hardest. You must not talk to one another. You must not look at anybody else. All of that stuff. And then I handed out the pen, and within seconds they were like, "What do you want to put down on the question?"
Right.
Or many of them just put their heads down and refused to take the test. And I asked, "What's going on? You heard what I said." I said, "Nah, we're gonna fail it. We're stupid, and this is just another test that's going to show how stupid. This is how
But they
demoralizing."
weren't. But they weren't. And the fact is that they probably could have been, if the district had taken some time in this case to see what type of situation would really be a situation where they could flourish and be engaged, instead of just taking them and shoving them into a school, things could have been very different in their lives.
Oh,
But
yeah.
but like you said, it was they just took the expedient way out. And is that still happening in schools around our country today?
It was probably the
Don't you hear
political way
stories?
out too.
Do some of your students come in and tell you stories like I heard over the years in UPAL? You know what? In the middle of the year, my principal came in and said, listen, when you come back on Monday, you're not teaching this grade anymore. We're moving you over here because this person's either leaving and we're taking you, who are a terrific kindergarten teacher, but we need you in fifth grade. And it's like, I didn't ask. I don't want to go there. I'm not prepared to do that. And they just pluck people up and move them over here and move them over there.
Well, in the case of our school, I think you were gone at that point, and you had juice in the district, and the gentleman who was replacing you, at least for the year, was a rank. He never ran a school before. He had no clout whatsoever. So I think that's probably why they shoved those kids in the school. What's he going to do about it? A political reason, expedient reason. Anyhow, thinking about those standardized tests, you know, the way the testing system works is those tests, because I collected the papers at the end, I was probably supposed to confess I didn't really do it according to Hoyle, but they probably would have made me walk the plank. So I had to turn the papers, and whoever processed those tests in the same context as the the top class in the top school. They're all the same.
Right.
Uh, and Lord knows our teachers probably took it on the chin. Why are the scores so long? What kind of awful teaching? And
Sure.
there's no room in there for who's the student, how do they respond to taking a test, and on and on, all of that stuff. So I want to
Well,
finish
it's
up
still
with
true
something
today in a lot of
positive,
places, though.
though.
You're a great teacher if your scores went up, and you didn't do your job if your scores didn't go up. I'm sorry, there's a whole lot more to being an outstanding
You
teacher.
think? Yeah. It's much too simplistic, and it's wrong, and it's just flat out wrong. Anyhow, so the last point I want to make is on an up-tempo positive. Thank heavens. I will never load up one of our conversations with this much doubtfulness about the
No,
system.
but the only way to turn it around is to put it out there.
Okay,
We're
well,
not complaining. We're saying these are issues and there are ways to change them. And they're done in great schools all over the country all the time. It's not like these are impossible tasks.
okay. Thank you for that. Once again, after all these years, your reassurance in my teaching is a big plus. Okay. So,
Thank you.
okay, so we're talking about learning culture. Now, last time we were describing the show. Our school put on a major production. The whole community would come in standing year after year after year. Day one, the kids would come back after summer vacation. The question, what show we're going to
Right.
do this? You know, and it just so rich. It was just such a one that cultural phenomenon in the school really made the school.
And Mark, what was the show? 90% of the time, it's like we're not taking an established show. We're not taking Annie or Bye Bye Birdie. We're going to write that show ourselves. And we're
Or
going to produce
rewrite,
it ourselves.
or rewrite a well-known show so that middle school kids could do it and understand it. And the dance teacher, um, Fran, I'll name her.
Mhm.
I mean, one year I would work hard on those shows too, but
Of
but
course.
but you never really saw the show in its complete form till the night it was shown. And I'm standing there in our little theater, the center, and Fran, the dance teacher, literally had every single kid in the school
In
in
the show.
one dance. They would came
Mhm.
in costume dancing in the aisles, in the wings, I was just flabbergasted. Every single kid on stage at the same time, to your point. Okay, but it doesn't have to be a show. Uh,
No.
there are many things. Here's one little anecdote I like. Kurt Vonnegut was always my favorite author. And, so I've read a lot of his material, his interviews about how he became an author. And over again, he pointed out that he learned to write by writing for his high school and his college newspaper. His Shortridge High School in Indiana actually ran a daily, and he wrote a column for it. And this is one of half a dozen of the most famous, most lauded novelists
Mhm.
of the 20th century. And we need to learn to write in high school, not in the classes, not out of the text, but by literally doing something real. And there was a time when every school had something, a magazine, a
Right.
literary. What happened to that? I mean, here's a relatively recent, I think it's relatively recent, New York Times article. It's from,
Yeah, it's from 2 years ago, I think. Yeah.
yeah, right. Should all schools have student newspapers? Thank you, New York Times, for asking. It actually turns out that a bunch of the New York City high schools do, but I suspect some of them are kind of like a rarefied club. What I would like to
Mhm.
see is the school put out a magazine or a newspaper that celebrates what's going on in the school, and or just relate,
And Mark, it doesn't have to just middle schools can do it. I mean, you can do it in many grades in elementary school.
and, and
What a
now
wonderful
more than
thing that would
ever,
be.
because you don't have to put out or print anything. It's all
It,
online. It could
it
all
could
be.
be a podcast.
It could,
Students
yeah,
could be doing podcasts, radio. within the school. There's so many things we could
So we
use the
know this
technology
stuff
for.
works. I think I'm going to leave it at that. We know
Mhm.
this stuff works. I mean, this is the school culture, the school's learning culture, the school as a community. We know that this makes such a difference. You and I know it from firsthand experience. And this is not rocket science. It really isn't. Um, as far as I can see, every school in the country has the ability to do this.
Absolutely.
So do it. This is the good stuff. I'll let
Yeah.
you have the last word,
Yeah.
gentlemen.
Everyone's happier when things are put together this way. So the question is, why doesn't it happen more often?
Let me
Lack of
stop the
time, lack
shame.
of money. So,
Yeah, no, it's certainly not about money. And as I say,
yeah.
every school in the country has laptops. They have
Hmm.
access to word processing, desktop publishing. The blogs are free if you want,
Hmm.
you can put it on this. I don't understand. In New York City, for instance, the school websites are ignored. And I look out in the suburbs and other cities, they're so rich. And I mean, sharing the kids' work, the act, it happens all the time. Okay, that's it for me.
Okay.
Shall I
Well,
stop the recording
this
now?
was, well, can we just have I mean, thank you. This was very enjoyable. It's fun. Um, it's great to talk about what happened in the past, to use it as examples. And there's absolutely no reason why it shouldn't be happening now. And we have to encourage people to talk to each other and collaborate. And if the leaders won't do it, there's nothing that should be stopping teachers except maybe fear from getting together and saying, okay, how can we be better here? And see what they can do to improve situations. Us
Yeah.
students deserve it.
Students
So
that we
thank you,
serve,
Mark.
we deserve to have I mean,
Oh,
when I
sure.
think I was a teacher literally classroom teacher for 18 and a half years.
Mhm.
Um, it was interesting. Maybe because I made it so, but
Yeah. Hmm.
I have no regrets about having done that. And sometimes things just click, that classroom is humming, everyone's busy doing something they enjoy doing. It's a
It's a
wonderful,
great feeling.
a wonderful thing.
It's wonderful when you see
So
that happening. Really.
let's do this again, but I think what I want to do is I want to drill down and